Welcome to Kiss and Chapters, where every story begins with a spark and ends with a swoon. If you love heart-fluttering romances, unexpected twists, and characters you'll root for, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I can keep bringing you more sweet, emotional, and unforgettable stories. Let's fall in love with every chapter, together. Chapter 1, The Last Regret. The room was too white. The kind of white that felt sterile, like the color had been bleached of life. Machines hummed gently around her, pumping numbers onto screens that no longer mattered. Shen Wei lay in the hospital bed, skin paper-thin, her body small beneath the mountain of blankets. Her breaths came slow, shallow, each one a struggle. Her once sharp eyes, dulled by time and regret, flicked toward the corner of the room. He wasn't there. Lu Ziyan hadn't come. Not that she could blame him. Not after everything she had done. Shen Wei had once been beautiful, elegant in a cold, unreachable way. The daughter of a powerful business family, she had grown up surrounded by status and expectations. She had learned early how to be composed, strategic, distant. Love had been a weakness, affection a transaction. She had married Lu Ziyan because their families arranged it. He was calm, patient, unshakable. A quiet CEO with a gentle soul who offered her respect and loyalty. She had taken all of it for granted. For 3 years he had waited. He had tried, oh how he had tried, to earn her love. Quiet dinners, flowers at her office, handwritten notes tucked into her books. And she had responded with polite silence, cold indifference, and walls he never managed to climb. Then one day he stopped trying. And she was too proud to chase after him. Her fingers trembled as they reached for the small photograph taped to the side of the monitor. A wedding photo. She hadn't even smiled in it. Ziyan had. Just a little. The kind of soft smile that said, I'll wait. She remembered now how she'd brushed off his suggestion for a honeymoon. How she'd turned her back on him in bed the first night. How she had let work, her pride, and the scars from a childhood without warmth control every part of her married life. Now, with hours left to live, she understood too late. I was wrong, she whispered, voice cracked like parchment. The nurse looked up from her clipboard. Ma'am. But Shen Wei wasn't speaking to her. Her dry eyes blinked slowly as she stared up at the ceiling. I wasted everything. A tear slipped down her temple. If I could do it all over. I'd love you properly this time, Lu Ziyan. The machines beeped faster. Then slower. Then steadied into a flat line. Darkness fell. But it didn't stay. She awoke to the sound of drums. Loud, rhythmic, celebratory. Shen Wei gasped and sat up, her heart pounding. But it wasn't the sterile scent of antiseptic that met her nose. It was jasmine, incense, and music. She blinked against the sunlight streaming through a window. Her eyes adjusted to see a room she hadn't set foot in for years. Red silk banners with the double happiness character. Ornate furniture. And her reflection, in the mirror across the bed, staring back in full bridal makeup. The same red lipstick. The same golden phoenix hairpin. The same white, stunned expression she had worn exactly 3 years ago. She stumbled out of the bed, heart racing. Her legs moved like they hadn't felt strength in years. Her fingers shook as she touched the mirror. No. The door burst open. Ah. Young madam, you're awake. Hurry, the guests are waiting. It's almost time for the tea ceremony, the maid said brightly, not noticing the color draining from Shen Wei's face. I need a moment, Shen Wei said, voice hoarse. Of course. But please don't be late. The master is waiting for you. The master. Lu Ziyan. Shen Wei collapsed into the chair beside the vanity. Her mind raced. This wasn't a dream. The smell, the weight of her dress, the vibration of music in the walls. It was all real. She had died. And then, come back. But not just anywhere. She was back on her wedding day. The day it had all begun. Minutes later, her legs moved on instinct as she was guided down the corridor of the old Lu family estate, each step echoing like a second chance. She stepped into the tea ceremony room, heart in her throat. And there he was. Lu Ziyan stood tall in a tailored black changshan, expression calm, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes flicked to her the moment she entered. And she felt her breath hitch. He was young. Younger than she remembered. No tired lines on his face. No cold distance in his gaze. Not yet. He gave her a polite nod as she joined him by the table. The ceremony began. Cups of tea were offered to the elders, their blessings spoken with cheerful tones. She went through the motions, bowing when she needed to, smiling when expected. But all she could think about was him. He sat beside her just like he had on this day before. She hadn't looked at him then. Hadn't even cared to see the way he kept glancing at her, hoping for some flicker of warmth. Now her eyes drifted to his hands, elegant, steady, warm. He wanted to reach for them. But she didn't. Not yet. The guests were loud, rowdy. The wedding banquet began, filled with laughter and the clink of glasses. Shen Wei sat beside Lu Zian at the head table and he turned to her during a lull. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked gently. Her heart nearly broke. He cared. Even now, not knowing what she would become in their first lifetime, he was already kind. She hesitated. "I'm a little overwhelmed." He nodded with understanding. "It's a big day." He swallowed. "You've been very patient." He looked surprised. "Not really. I just want today to go well. For both of us." She studied him. This man so steady, so sincere. He had given her years of loyalty. Years of quiet love. Years of being overlooked until he stopped giving her pieces of himself. But right now she had it all again. She reached beneath the table and gently placed her hand on his. He looked down in shock. "I'll try," she whispered, "to be better this time." He blinked. "What?" "Nothing." She smiled softly. "Thank you for marrying me, Lu Zian." He stared at her like he didn't know what to say. And in truth he didn't. Because the cold, silent bride he had braced himself for was smiling at him like the sunrise. Later that night, back in their wedding suite, Shen Wei stood beside the window and stared out at the moon. She heard him step inside. "I had the staff prepare the second bedroom," he said carefully. "I remember you mentioned wanting space." Shen Wei turned. The Lu Zian from her past had once stood in this room, eyes downcast, dignity intact, walking out of it on their wedding night alone. "No," she said. His brows lifted slightly. "You don't need to go." He looked at her, uncertain. "Are you sure?" "I'm not the woman you think I am," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "We just got married. I barely know you." She looked down. "Exactly." Silence lingered between them. Then, softly, she walked forward and placed her hand over his heart. "I want to know you," she said. "For real. And if you'll let me, I want you to know me too." Lu Zian stared at her for a long moment. Then very slowly he lifted his hand and covered hers. "I'd like that." That night they slept side by side. Not as strangers. Not yet as lovers. But as two people given one more chance to get it right. And for the first time in her life, Shen Wei fell asleep with a heart full of hope. Chapter 2: The Cold Bride No More. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting soft golden patterns across the bed. Shen Wei stirred gently, blinking against the brightness, unsure for a moment if she had only dreamed the impossible. But as her eyes adjusted, she saw him, Lu Zian, already sitting at the edge of the bed buttoning his shirt. He was quiet, poised. Just as she remembered. Only now she knew what he was thinking behind that calm exterior. She must want space. "She regrets marrying me. Don't show you care too much. Don't get hurt again. Not this time. Not ever again." She sat up, brushing the hair from her face. "Good morning," she said, her voice still soft with sleep. Lu Zian turned, clearly surprised. He didn't expect her to speak to him first. "Good morning," he said slowly. "I didn't wake you, did I?" She shook her head, pulling the covers around her. "No. I slept well." That too surprised him. In their past life, she hadn't spoken to him in the morning after the wedding. She'd simply gotten up, dressed, and walked out like he was no more than a business obligation. But now she smiled gently at him. "You're going to the office?" "Yes. Just a half day. My assistant insisted I come in briefly." "Can I make you breakfast before you go?" Lu Zian blinked. "You cook?" Her smile turned sheepish. "Not well. But I'm willing to learn." He gave a slight chuckle. "That's new." "It's a new day," she said meaningfully. "Let's make it count." In the kitchen, Shen Wei discovered quickly that her past life had left her with precisely zero cooking skills. She stared at the eggs like they were plotting against her. Still, she refused to call for the maid. She was reborn. She was going to live differently. She'd start here, doing the things she never bothered with. Cracking eggs. Burning toast. Spilling soy sauce. Cursing at a rice cooker. Lucian walked in just in time to see her struggling with a frying pan and looking absolutely horrified at the half-browned mess in it. He leaned against the doorframe, biting back a smile. Need help? I refuse to be defeated by breakfast, she muttered. That pan disagrees. She huffed, finally laughing. Fine. Save me. He walked over and took the pan gently from her hands. Let me show you a trick. As he guided her hand with his, her heart stuttered. His touch was warm, careful. Never assuming, never forceful. She looked up at him. He didn't meet her eyes. He was focused entirely on making sure the egg flipped properly. He didn't realize she was falling for him all over again. They sat down to eat the most awkward, burnt, yet somehow wonderful breakfast she'd ever had. He sipped his coffee while she nibbled on toast. Thank you, she said after a quiet moment. He looked up. For what? For this. For being kind. For everything. Lucian was clearly uncertain how to respond. This wasn't the woman he'd prepared himself to spend his life with. She was different. Softer. He didn't know what to do with that yet. So he simply nodded. You don't have to thank me, he said. We're married. Shen Wei's heart twisted. I never gave you a husband's place before, she thought. But I will now. After he left for work, she stood alone in the entryway for a long time, holding the mug he'd used. It still held a trace of his warmth. She wandered through the house after that. It was larger than she remembered. Impeccably decorated. Silent. In her past life, she'd used this house like a hotel, leaving early, returning late, treating it like a place to pass time, not build a life. This time it would be different. She picked up her phone and called the florist. I want indoor plants delivered. And some fresh peonies. The house needed life. So did she. Later that afternoon she paid a visit to Lucian's office, something she had never done in their previous marriage. She stepped into the lobby of Lu Group, earning startled glances from the receptionists. It was clear no one had expected to see the CEO's cold, elegant wife here. Madame Lu, the assistant stammered. Did you have an appointment? Shen Wei smiled, holding a small lunchbox wrapped in linen. No appointment. Just lunch. May I wait in his office? The girl nearly tripped trying to say yes. Lucian returned from a board meeting to find her seated calmly at his desk, sipping tea. His eyes widened just slightly. You came here, he asked. I brought lunch, she said, lifting the box. Homemade. Well, assembled. I can't say it's good, but I made the effort. He stared at her, clearly suspicious now. She saw it, the silent question in his eyes. What do you want? Shen Wei smiled, refusing to let old guilt swallow her. I'm just being a wife, she said simply. He sat down across from her. His gaze held hers for a long time. Finally he spoke. You're different. I know. He didn't ask why. He just began to eat quietly, carefully. And when he looked up again, his expression was unreadable, but gentler than before. I like this version of you, he said. I'm starting to like her too, she whispered. That evening they didn't go to separate rooms. They sat on the couch and watched a movie side by side like newlyweds trying to figure out how to be around each other. Shen Wei stole glances at his profile, memorizing the slope of his nose, the way he tilted his head slightly when reading subtitles. In the past she'd ignored him. Now she could barely look away. When he got up to make tea, she followed him into the kitchen, resting her head on his back for just a moment. He stilled but didn't move away. Baby steps. But they were moving forward. Later that night, alone in bed, Shen Wei clutched her pillow and stared at the ceiling. She knew rebuilding trust wouldn't happen overnight. She had broken it once, deeply. And though he didn't know the full story, Lucian had scars. But this time she wouldn't give up. She would stay. He would love him properly. Even if it took a lifetime to prove it. Chapter 3. Learning to Love. The morning sun filtered through sheer curtains as Shen Wei stretched under the soft silk sheets. For once she didn't immediately rush to dress, check her emails or review the day's calendar. In her previous life, her mornings were full of cold rituals and empty routines. But this time she was learning to pause. To feel. To breathe. In the quiet of their bedroom she turned to her side, and found Lucian already gone. Her smile faltered. She'd hoped he might stay a little longer today. But then she noticed something on the nightstand. A small thermos of warm soy milk and a note in his clean, sharp handwriting. Meeting at 7 a.m. Didn't want to wake you. Drink this before it gets cold. Thin. A smile bloomed on her lips, soft and real. He didn't say much. But he was always thoughtful. In her past life, she would have tossed the note without reading it, claimed she didn't like soy milk and skipped breakfast entirely. This time she took a long sip. Still warm. Just like her second chance. Later that morning, Shen Wei stepped into the dining hall where her mother-in-law, Madame Lu, was having breakfast alone. Their relationship had always been tense. The elegant matriarch had tried many times to bridge the distance, but Shen Wei, too proud and defensive, had always kept her at arm's length. Today she bowed respectfully. Mother. Madame Lu looked up a bit startled. You're up early. I thought we could have breakfast together. The older woman blinked. Of course. Shen Wei sat across from her, pouring tea for both of them. There was a long silence. Then Madame Lu said carefully, You seem different, Wei. Shen Wei paused. I was too cold before. I hurt a lot of people. The older woman looked up sharply. I want to change that, Shen Wei continued. Starting with you. Madame Lu set down her chopsticks. I never disliked you, you know. You're strong. But strength without warmth can be very lonely. Shen Wei nodded, eyes stinging. I know that now. There was silence again. But this time it felt like a door had been cracked open. The rest of the day passed in soft waves. Shen Wei had lunch with the staff, something she had never done before. She wandered through the Lu estate garden and began making a list of things to grow, things that Xian liked. He once mentioned his mother used to grow hydrangeas. She'd plant some. In the afternoon she took a cab across town and stopped in front of a familiar restaurant. Her parents' favorite. In her past life she had visited often, only to be scolded or pressured to be more impressive, more powerful, more useful to the Shen family business. Her relationship with them was transactional. She hesitated at the door, then turned away. She wouldn't repeat old patterns. Not this time. Instead she walked toward a smaller cafe across the street and dialed her mother. Mother, she said once the line picked up. If you're free, let's meet here instead. I want to talk, not as a businesswoman but as your daughter. There was a pause. Then, I'll come. And just like that she took another step forward. That evening Lu Xian returned home earlier than expected. He found her in the living room, barefoot in a soft knit sweater, curled up with a photo album. His brows rose. I didn't know we had one of those. I found it in the study, she said, patting the spot beside her. Come look. He hesitated. But curiosity won. He sat beside her. The album held pictures from their wedding, ones Shen Wei had never bothered to see before. Xian looked younger. Earnest. A little stiff in some photos, especially the ones where she hadn't smiled. I'm sorry, she whispered. You looked so happy. I looked like I was posing for a magazine cover. You were stunning, he said gently. But cold, she said. I didn't even try. Xian was quiet. Then, why are you telling me this? Because I want to try now. He turned to look at her fully. I don't know what's changed, Wei, but you're softer. You're reaching out. And I don't know if I should hope or be cautious. She reached out, touching his wrist. I hurt you in the past. I know that. I don't expect you to forget it overnight. But give me the chance to earn your trust back. He stared at her hand on his. Then slowly he turned his palm and wrapped his fingers around hers. He said. Let's start again. They ate dinner together that night, laughing over her attempt at soup dumplings that ended up looking like soggy pillows. She let him teach her how to fold them properly. She even accidentally flicked flour on his cheek, and laughed when he retaliated with a playful dusting of his own. It was simple. Messy. And when they sat together on the balcony afterward, sharing warm tea under the moonlight, she turned to him. Xian. Did you ever think we'd get here? He sipped his tea. I used to dream about it. She looked down. I'm sorry for making you wait. You're here now, he said. And for the first time she felt like she was truly here. In this life. With him. Chapter 4. A Husband's Heart. Lu Xian had always been good at two things. Staying calm and waiting. Patience had been his silent companion all his life, through boardroom battles, sleepless mergers and long stretches of loneliness. It was something he wore like a second skin, especially after marrying Shen Wei. Because with her, patience was the only thing he had. She was beautiful, intelligent, and composed, like a crystal sculpture. Flawless but distant. A wife by title, not by affection. She never raised her voice or caused a scene. No, she simply closed herself off. Quiet indifference that cut deeper than anger ever could. For 3 years he had waited. For a sign. For a flicker. For anything. And when nothing came, he'd quietly stopped hoping. But now she looked at him like she saw him. She smiled. She touched his hand. She burned toast for him. And every time she did something completely unlike the woman he thought he married, a small part of him cracked open, equal parts wonder and fear. Xian stood at the glass window of his office, overlooking the city skyline. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Shen Wei, don't forget to eat lunch today. I left something on your desk. He turned and walked to his desk. There, wrapped in a soft blue cloth, was a small lunchbox. Inside, tomato and egg stir-fry, rice and a simple soup. Not fancy. A little uneven. But made by her hands. He stared at it for a long moment before sitting down. The food was warm. So was the unfamiliar feeling in his chest. In the past, Shen Wei had never visited his office. She'd barely called unless it was for appearances or family obligations. But this week alone she'd stopped by twice. The second time she brought bubble tea and waited in the lobby for half an hour just to surprise him between meetings. She'd grinned and waved when he saw her. Like a young wife in love. It was disorienting. And strangely addictive. At home she was changing everything. She laughed more now. She'd started tending to the once forgotten garden. She greeted him when he walked in. She asked about his day. She didn't recoil when he reached for her hand last night on the balcony. She laced her fingers with his and leaned her head on his shoulder. Xian didn't know how to explain it. He wanted to believe this was real. That she was real. But fear clung to him like shadow. What if this change was temporary? What if she realized again that she didn't love him? On Saturday morning, Xian woke to the smell of jasmine tea and the quiet hum of classical music. He padded down to the kitchen and stopped short. There she was. In a pale blue robe, humming softly, flipping pancakes, burning half of them, but laughing all the same. Flour smudged her cheek. She looked up, startled, then beamed. You're up. He blinked. You're making breakfast again? I'm determined to win against the frying pan, she said with mock seriousness. Xian stepped closer. Hey, She handed him the spatula. Please. Before I set something on fire. They cooked together, side by side, and for the first time in 3 years, he heard her laugh without restraint. She stole a piece of fruit from the counter and popped it into his mouth before he could protest. His heart jolted. She kissed his cheek, barely a brush, and walked away to set the table. He stood there for a full minute, stunned. Something was happening. He was falling for her. Again. But this time it felt like she was falling with him. Later that day they went grocery shopping together. To anyone else it might have looked ordinary. A couple browsing the market, arguing over which soy sauce brand was better. But to Xian it was extraordinary. Because Shen Wei held his hand the whole time. And didn't let go. Even when they bumped into her old friend, Lu Ran, the same man Xian had once suspected she had feelings for. In the past she would have lit up at the sight of him. Hidden smiles. Careful glances. Defensiveness. But this time Shen Wei's grip on his hand tightened. When Lu Ran smiled and asked how married life was, Shen Wei replied simply, wonderful. Xian is my everything. And the look in her eyes wasn't for show. Xian's heart soared. Later in the car she turned to him. I don't want to repeat old mistakes, she said. That life was so cold. He looked at her sharply. That life. She caught herself. I mean, the way I used to be. He nodded slowly. But her words lingered. Like she knew more than she was letting on. That night they stood on the rooftop watching the stars. Xian broke the silence. Where? You don't have to force this. Whatever it is you're doing, changing for me. I don't want to trap you. She turned to him, eyes soft. You're not trapping me, Xian. You're freeing me. He frowned. From what? She stepped closer. From myself. From who I was. You always gave me love I didn't deserve. This time I want to earn it. He searched her face for lies, for hesitation. There was none. He cupped her cheek gently. And if I fall for you again? She leaned into his touch. Then I'll catch you. He didn't kiss her yet. Not quite. But his forehead pressed to hers. And in that breath between heartbeats, the man who had once stopped hoping, dared to start again. Chapter 5. Fixing the Cracks. The invitation sat on the hallway table, innocent enough in its gold-trimmed envelope. Lu Family Dinner, Sunday 7 p.m. Hosted by Madame Lu. Attendance requested of all family members. In her past life, this dinner had been a disaster. Shen Wei could remember it vividly. The clinking of expensive glasses, the judgmental glances, the hushed whispering from relatives who never approved of her cool demeanor. She had worn the wrong expression, offered curt replies, and walked out halfway through the meal after one particularly cruel aunt insinuated that she wasn't warm enough to carry the Lu family name. That night Lu Ziyan hadn't chased after her. Not out of anger but quiet disappointment. And that was when she'd first noticed the change in his eyes, the soft closing of a door. Not this time. She picked up the invitation and carried it into the study where Lu Ziyan was working. I saw the dinner invite, she said gently, resting the card on his desk. He looked up surprised. You don't have to go if it makes you uncomfortable. I want to, she said. He tilted his head. You sure? I've hurt your family too, Ziyan, she said quietly. It's time I make that right. The evening of the dinner she dressed carefully, not in the dramatic designer gown she once wore to prove a point, but in a simple elegant cream cheongsam with jade earrings gifted by his mother on their engagement. She'd never worn them before. Ziyan noticed the moment she walked out of the bedroom. You look beautiful, he said softly. She offered a nervous smile. Let's go win your family back. He didn't know what surprised him more, her smile or the fact that she meant our family. The Lu estate was lively when they arrived. Red lanterns lit the garden, and the scent of braised duck and lotus root soup drifted in the air. Inside, the dining room was filled with relatives, Ziyan's cousins, uncles, and especially the older generation who rarely held back their opinions. They all turned when Shen Wei entered. The silence was immediate. In her past life she would have straightened her spine and stared them down, aloof and icy. Tonight she bowed respectfully and smiled. Good evening, grandfather. Uncle. Auntie. Madame Lu blinked from across the room. Even Ziyan's aloof eldest aunt, who once called her frigid, raised an eyebrow in disbelief. Shen Wei, said his cousin Yuling with a tight smile, you're glowing tonight. Marriage suits me, she replied calmly, slipping her hand into Ziyan's under the table. And I plan to make it suit me for a long time. That earned a few surprised glances. Dinner was served. Dishes came one by one. Shen Wei complimented the chef, passed plates to elders, and engaged in actual small talk, things she never once attempted before. And then it happened. Uncle Lu, who had always been the boldest, leaned back and asked, So, Shen Wei, when will the next generation arrive? Ziyan's cousin just had twins. No pressure, of course. In her past life she had snapped. Something sharp and dismissive like, why should I give the Lu family heirs when I'm treated like a guest? But no. Shen Wei reached for her teacup and smiled. When the time is right, I look forward to growing our family. But for now, I'm still learning how to be a good wife. The room stilled. Even Ziyan froze. Madame Lu choked softly on her soup. You. Aunt Ming scoffed. A good wife. Ziyan tensed beside her, about to speak, but Shen Wei beat him to it. Yes, she said, still calm. I made mistakes. I shut people out. I was proud, too proud to admit I was wrong. But I love your son. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to him, and to all of you if you'll allow it. Silence. Then Madame Lu cleared her throat. I believe her. Everyone turned. Madame Lu dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin. People change. And I've never seen my son look at anyone the way he's been looking at her lately. Shen Wei's throat tightened. Ziyan's hand squeezed hers beneath the table. Dinner continued, gentler now. The jabs stopped. The atmosphere softened. Shen Wei could feel years of frost melting, slowly but surely. After dinner she stepped out into the garden for some air. The koi pond shimmered under the lanterns. She crouched near the water's edge, watching the fish swim in lazy circles. Footsteps approached. Xian joined her in silence. That went better than I thought, she murmured. You were amazing. I was just honest. He looked at her, then really looked. You wore the jade earrings. She smiled. I didn't deserve them before. I do now. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny red velvet box. What's this? She asked, blinking. I was going to wait until your birthday, but... He opened it. Inside was a delicate bracelet, silver inlaid with a single moonstone, the one she once admired in a shop window but never allowed herself to want. I remember you said it reminded you of peace, he said quietly. And I think that's what you're bringing me now. She stared down at it, tears welling. You don't have to. I want to, he said, clasping it gently around her wrist. You're trying so hard. And I see it, Wei. I feel it. She looked up at him, breath trembling. I'm not trying because I have to. I'm trying because I love you. His lips parted slightly. And then he leaned in. Their lips met in a kiss that was slow, warm, and filled with everything they never had the first time around. There were no fireworks. No grand declarations. Just two people healing together under lantern light, in the garden where cracks were starting to close. Chapter 6. The First Smile. The morning after the family dinner felt different. Not because of the sunlight spilling through the windows or the sound of birds outside, but because Shen Wei woke up to the sound of Lu Xian laughing. Not a full-blown laugh, just a low, surprised chuckle. But it was real. And it was coming from the kitchen. Shen Wei slipped out of bed, her robe falling around her shoulders as she padded toward the sound. She stopped just short of the doorway. Xian stood at the counter, apron around his waist, a pair of mismatched oven mitts on his hands. On the table was a tray of blackened croissants, clearly overbaked. You're up, he said when he saw her. She blinked. You tried to bake? He looked sheepish. I thought I'd return the favor. You've been making me breakfast all week. Her lips curved. They're uniquely shaped. They're in mourning, he said dryly. For my dignity. She couldn't help it, she laughed. Really laughed. And when she saw the spark in his eyes, she felt her heart squeeze. You should laugh more often, she said softly. So should you. He reached for her hand without hesitation now, tugging her into the kitchen as she clutched her stomach. Together they tried the least burned croissant, grimaced and decided on takeout. But even eating store-bought noodles at the dining table, it felt like a moment worth remembering. That afternoon Shen Wei pulled out something she hadn't touched in years, a dusty old sketchbook. In her younger days, before ambition swallowed her whole, she used to draw. Flowers. Cityscapes. People she loved but never told. Her college notebooks were filled with pencil doodles of Lu Xian from the back of the lecture hall. He never even knew. She sat in the garden, curled beneath a tree, and began sketching his profile from memory. When he came home, he found her exactly like that. Smudged fingers, thoughtful expression, the curve of his jawline forming beneath her pencil. He approached silently. I was wondering where you disappeared to, he murmured. She jumped. I thought you wouldn't be home till 6. I left early, he said. I wanted to see you. She smiled and turned the sketchpad toward him. Do you like it? He stared. The drawing wasn't perfect. It was slightly off balance, a bit rushed. But there was something unmistakably tender in the lines. The way she'd shaded his eyes as if she were still learning every part of him. You drew this? He asked. She nodded. I used to do it all the time. Just never showed you before. His thumb gently brushed over a smudge of graphite on her cheek. It's beautiful, he said. So are you, she replied before she could stop herself. Xian blinked. Are you flirting with me? Shen Wei laughed. Would you be terribly scandalized if I were? He leaned down, lips brushing her temple. Mildly. But I'd survive. That evening they curled up on the couch with popcorn and an old movie playing in the background. Shen Wei rested her head against his shoulder, her fingers lazily tracing circles over the back of his hand. In their past life, silence had always been heavy, awkward, filled with the things neither dared say. Now silence was comfortable. Warm. I thought you didn't like old films, he said after a while. I didn't, she replied. But then I realized it wasn't the movie. I just didn't like watching them alone. He turned his head slightly, brushing his lips against her hair. You're not alone anymore. I know, she whispered. You're here. And I'm staying. She looked up at him, eyes shining. I hope you do. Later, as they got ready for bed, Xian paused at the door of their shared room. Are you sure? He asked gently, hand resting on the doorknob. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. You don't, she said immediately, crossing the room to take his hand. I want you here. He nodded, stepping inside with her. They lay side by side in the soft quiet. She rolled to face him. Xian. Thank you. For not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to. He didn't speak right away. Then turning toward her he said, You've changed, Wei. And I don't know why. But every time you smile at me I feel like I've come home. She reached up and touched his cheek, her thumb brushing his skin. As I have changed. And I'm not going to waste another day pushing you away. His gaze held hers for a long, breathless second. And then slowly he leaned in. This time there was no hesitation. Their kiss was slow, full of quiet wonder. It wasn't fire, it was warmth. Steady and unshakable. The kind of kiss that didn't need to prove anything. The kind that said, I'm here. I see you. I choose you. When they parted, Shen Wei whispered, Good night, husband. And Lu Xian smiled. Not just a polite, subtle one. But a full, soft, peaceful smile. The kind she hadn't seen in years. The first real smile of their second beginning. Chapter 7. Choosing love again. It started with a message. A simple line from an old contact. Lu Ran, back in town. Coffee. In her past life she wouldn't have hesitated. Lu Ran had been her friend, her confidant, and if she was honest, her escape. He was everything she thought Lu Xian wasn't at the time. Easygoing, emotionally open, and always ready with a teasing joke. But Lu Ran had never truly loved her. And she had nearly let him ruin the one man who did. Shen Wei stared at the message, thumb hovering over her phone. She didn't feel tempted this time. She felt guilty. Not because of Lu Ran, but because of the version of herself that had once waited eagerly for that exact message. Who had dressed up carefully before every friendly meeting. Who had been too blind to see the quiet hurt in her husband's eyes every time she came home late. Not anymore. This time she'd face it. And end it. The cafe was the same as she remembered. Small, tucked between office towers, filled with soft jazz and the scent of burnt espresso beans. Lu Ran was already there when she arrived. Still handsome. Still smiling with that easy charm. But something in Shen Wei had changed. Before she might have dressed to impress. Today she wore a simple white blouse and jeans. No makeup. No perfume. Nothing to hide behind. Shen Wei, he said warmly, standing. You look different. I am different, she replied, taking the seat across from him. He blinked. Still sharp. She smiled faintly. Still not here to flirt. He chuckled. All right, fair. I just wanted to catch up. I heard your wedding happened. Xian must be relieved. We've been married for a while now. Right. 3 years, isn't it? He stirred his coffee lazily. I always thought it was strange. You and him. So quiet. So calculated. Shen Wei's smile disappeared. He's not like that, she said. You just never bothered to see him. Lu Ran raised an eyebrow. Someone's protective now. I should have been before. He looked at her, really looked at her now. So what is this? I've changed, meeting. She took a slow breath. No, she said. This is goodbye. The amusement in his face faded. What? In my past life, she paused, catching herself. In the past, I let you be too close. I entertained the idea that maybe you were what I needed. And now I know you were just convenient. His eyes narrowed. Wow. Cold. No, she said gently. Clear. She stood. Thank you, Ran, for the reminder. But I'm in love with my husband. And I've hurt him enough. I won't let anyone, or any version of me, do it again. She turned without another word and walked out of the cafe, the bell above the door chiming like a closing chapter. That night Lu Xian was in the garden, trimming the hydrangeas she'd planted. He looked up when he saw her walking toward him, face flushed, eyes bright. You all right? He asked. She nodded. Then without hesitation she wrapped her arms around him from behind and rested her cheek against his back. I did something important today, she whispered. Xian didn't turn around, just let her hold him, her warmth wrapping around him like sunlight. Yeah, he murmured. I closed a door, she said. And opened the right one. He reached up, gently placing his hand over hers. I'm glad. She circled around to face him, arms still around his waist. I almost lost you once because I couldn't tell the difference between comfort and love, she said softly. But now I know. Love is showing up. Love is patience. Love is you. Xian looked stunned, but only for a second. Then he cupped her face and kissed her. This kiss wasn't soft or hesitant. It was sure. Certain. Flaming. Because for the first time since their marriage began, they were finally walking toward each other at the same time. When they pulled apart, Shen Wei smiled through misty eyes. I love you. Xian didn't say it back. He leaned his forehead to hers and whispered, I know. And somehow that was even better. Chapter 8, Where Hope Lives. Shen Wei woke to the soft rhythm of rain tapping against the windows. It was still early, the sky outside a pale gray. The world felt hushed and gentle. She lay still for a moment, watching Lu Xian sleep beside her. His arms stretched over the pillow, his face relaxed in sleep. There was a peace in him she hadn't seen before. A softness that hadn't been there the first time around. He trusted her now. And more than that, he loved her. She knew it in the way he touched her hand without thinking, in how he looked for her across crowded rooms, how he always waited for her to speak even when the silence was long. This time we're building something real. She leaned forward and kissed his brow. Xian stirred, eyes blinking open. Morning. Good morning, she whispered. You're smiling too early, he mumbled, pulling her closer. What did I miss? She laughed. Nothing. Everything. I'm just happy. He blinked sleepily, then smiled too. That's new. Get used to it, she teased. And for the first time she meant it. Deeply. Later that morning, Shen Wei found herself rearranging the study. She cleared out old documents, opened windows, and aired the space with fresh jasmine-scented oil. On a whim, she hung their wedding photo on the wall. A smaller version, one where Xian had been caught smiling faintly at her while she stared ahead. Looking at it now, she saw everything she'd missed then. The longing in his eyes. The hope. I'll make it right. She was humming quietly to herself when she felt a wave of lightheadedness. She grabbed the edge of the desk, the room spinning briefly. When it passed, she stood frozen for a long second. Strange. She hadn't felt like this in years. That afternoon, she joined Xian on a visit to his charitable foundation's event. In the past, she would have skipped it, made excuses about work or fatigue. But now, she walked beside him proudly, greeting staff, helping elderly guests with refreshments, even giving a short speech on behalf of the family. Xian watched her with quiet awe. She was radiant, not in the distant, polished way she'd once carried herself, but warm and real. Engaged. Sincere. Later, as they sat in the car headed home, he reached for her hand. I don't know what changed you, he said quietly. But I'm grateful for it every day. She smiled. I changed because I lost you once. He turned to her fully. You never lost me. I did, she said softly. You just didn't leave. But you were slipping away. I could see it in your eyes. And I was too proud to stop it. He squeezed her hand. Then we're lucky. Because now we get to fall in love properly. She felt her chest ache with happiness. The following morning, the lightheadedness returned, along with a sudden, unexpected wave of nausea. Shen Wei frowned as she sat on the bathroom floor, the toothbrush forgotten beside her. Her heart beat faster. It couldn't be. But just in case. She stood, opened the drawer and found a box tucked in the back. A test she'd bought long ago and never used because they hadn't even tried. Because she'd once thought it didn't matter. Now, everything had changed. Minutes later she stared at the test. 2 pink lines. Positive. The breath left her lungs in a rush. She sat down slowly, the world tilting, not from fear but wonder. She was going to have a baby. Their baby. Tears welled up, silent and stunned. Not because she was afraid, but because she was ready. This time she was truly ready. That evening, Lu Xian returned to find her in the kitchen. Quiet, thoughtful, fingers gently resting over her stomach. He paused in the doorway. You're early. Something wrong. She turned to him slowly, eyes bright. Something's very right. He stepped closer, searching her face. Where's? She took his hand and placed it gently on her belly. I went to the doctor. His hand stilled. She smiled. We're going to have a child. He said nothing for a full 5 seconds. Then he knelt, eyes fixed on her stomach. You're serious? She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm pregnant. Zian let out a breathless laugh, half sobbing. Are you okay? Are you feeling all right? Do you need? She cupped his face. I need you. He stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, but she didn't mind. She had never felt safer. This is the best day of my life, he whispered. I know, she said softly. Me too. Later, as they lay in bed, his arms around her and her head on his chest, Shen Wei closed her eyes. She didn't need to relive the past anymore. She didn't need to rewrite it. Because they were writing something new now. And for the first time in 2 lives, she was truly, fully, finally happy. Chapter 9. A Father in the Making. Rain drummed softly against the windows, a gentle rhythm that echoed the quickening pace of Shen Wei's life. Her world had shifted. Not in chaos, not in fear, but in quiet, beautiful waves. Pregnancy changed everything, her senses, her routine, her heart. She felt more aware of herself, of every step, every breath, every heartbeat, and the one growing inside her. But with that awareness came vulnerability. And uncertainty. It started with the nausea, normal but sharp and persistent. She tried to laugh it off. Zian, however, didn't. He hovered. He brought her warm ginger water every morning, adjusted her pillows 10 times a night, and downloaded every pregnancy book he could find. When she skipped her prenatal vitamins once, he nearly scheduled an emergency appointment. I'm pregnant, not dying, she teased. He frowned. You're carrying our child. I'm allowed to be dramatic. She rolled her eyes, but her heart melted every time he looked at her like she was a miracle. Because to him she was. At 7 weeks, they went for their first sonogram. The doctor turned the screen and pointed. There it is. Just a little bean right now, but there's a strong heartbeat. Shen Wei's hand clenched around Zian's. He was speechless. Completely still. Then he leaned in closer to the screen and whispered, That's our baby? The doctor smiled. Yes. Zian turned to Shen Wei with wide eyes, then slowly kissed her knuckles. Thank you, he murmured. Her throat tightened. Why are you thanking me? For coming back to me, he said. For letting me hope again. But not all things came easy. Word spread through the Liu family fast. Some offered genuine congratulations. Others, not so much. His eldest aunt, the same one who had once questioned Shen Wei's wifely warmth, raised an eyebrow when they visited for a family gathering. A child, she said coolly. Are we sure now is the right time? With everything going on in the company. Zian stood before Shen Wei could speak. Everything will be taken care of. My family comes first now. There was a stunned silence. Even Shen Wei stared at him. In their past life he had always been gentle, diplomatic, even when others cut into her with words. She had resented him for it. Now he was different, sharper, unafraid to protect her out loud. Later in the car she looked over at him and said softly, You didn't have to do that. I did, he said without hesitation. Because I watched you face them alone before. I won't let that happen again. She reached for his hand, fingers threading with his. This baby is already so lucky. He turned to her, a small smile playing on his lips. Because of you. No, she said. Because of us. In her 3rd month, Shen Wei's body began to ache more. Her appetite fluctuated. Some days were smooth. Others were exhausting. And with the strain came the creeping shadows of old fears. What if she wasn't strong enough? What if she reverted back to the cold, distant woman she'd once been? But every time doubt crept in, Zian was there. He massaged her back without being asked. He sat beside her when she cried for no reason, holding her without a single question. One night she found him in the nursery to be holding a small onesie. He looked up startled. I was just imagining. She leaned against the doorframe. You're going to be an amazing father. I don't know anything about babies, he said honestly. But I'll learn. You learned how to fold dumplings because I kept messing them up, she said with a soft smile. I think you'll be just fine. He chuckled, then pulled her into a careful hug. Only if you're by my side. Always. As the weeks passed, they fell into a rhythm. Morning walks turned into quiet bonding sessions. Shen Wei started journaling for the baby. writing letters they'd read together one day. Xian recorded voice memos of himself reading children's stories at night, just in case she couldn't sleep. He talked to her belly every evening. Sometimes nonsense. Sometimes things like, "You better love your mother the way I do." And Shen Wei would laugh even as tears ran down her cheeks. Because she had never imagined love could feel like this. Daily. Earned. But love is also tested. At 16 weeks, during a routine appointment, the doctor frowned slightly at the screen. Xian noticed first. "Is something wrong?" The doctor hesitated. "The baby is healthy, but the placenta's position is a little low. It's not uncommon, but we'll need to monitor it. And you, Mrs. Liu, will need to rest more. No stress." Strictly. Xian turned to Shen Wei immediately. "You're going home. No arguments. But no more housework. No market errands. Not even paperwork. I'll handle it. You rest." She opened her mouth to protest. But then he knelt by her chair and pressed a kiss to her belly. "Little Bean comes first," he said firmly. And Shen Wei, heart aching with gratitude, nodded. "All right," she whispered. "We'll do this together." Chapter 10. A Love Reborn. The hospital room was quiet, too quiet. Shen Wei's hands trembled as another wave of pain washed through her. She bit her lip, blinking rapidly, but the tears still came. Lu Xian was right there, crouched beside her, holding her hand in both of his. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." She squeezed his hand hard enough to hurt. "It hurts so much." "I know. You're doing so well." His voice cracked. "Just a little more." After hours of waiting, her low-lying placenta had led to an emergency decision. She was rushed into a C-section. Even as doctors moved quickly and nurses prepped, Xian never left her side. Not once. "I'm scared," she whispered through her mask. He kissed her forehead. "You're the bravest person I know." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was a cry. A thin, beautiful, piercing sound. Xian's breath hitched. Then a nurse appeared beside them, eyes crinkling above her surgical mask. "Congratulations. It's a girl." Shen Wei turned her head slightly and then she saw her. So tiny. Wrapped in white. Crying, red-faced, alive. He was perfect. Xian pressed his forehead to Shen Wei's temple, his voice shaking. "You did it. She's here." Shen Wei didn't have words. Only tears. In the recovery room, she finally held their daughter. Her little hands opened and closed, grasping the air. Her eyes were still shut, her cheeks impossibly round. Shen Wei touched her gently, as if the baby might disappear if she blinked too hard. "She looks like you," she murmured. Xian sat beside her, one arm around her shoulders, gazing down with stunned wonder. "She has your nose," he whispered. "She has your calm," Shen Wei replied. "She didn't even cry when they moved her." "She has your strength," he said, brushing a finger over their daughter's tiny brow. "She made it through everything. Just like you." They sat in silence, staring at the little miracle they had created, together. They named her Lu Anyao. Anyao meaning peaceful brightness. Because that's what she brought with her. Light. The future. Hope. The day Shen Wei returned home from the hospital, the once cold mansion had been transformed. A cradle stood by the window. Fresh daisies filled vases in every room, her favorite. And above the nursery door, hung with care, was a small wooden plaque that read, "Welcome, Anyao." Xian carried her over the threshold, then gently placed her in her bassinet. Shen Wei stood beside him, arms around his waist. "We're home," she whispered. "Yes," he said softly. "We're finally home." Weeks passed. The sleepless nights came. So did the endless diaper changes, the cries at 2 a.m., the panic over every hiccup. But Xian was there for all of it. Learning how to swaddle, humming lullabies off-key, reading bedtime stories even when Anya was too young to understand. One night, as Shen Wei fed the baby in the glow of the nursery lamp, she looked at her husband. Hair a mess, eyes tired, arms still holding a baby bottle like a sword. "You're a good dad," she whispered. He turned to her. "I'm trying." "You don't have to try anymore," she said. "You already are." Later that night, when Anya was asleep, Shen Wei curled into Xian's side in bed. The world was quiet again. But this time not cold. Warm. Alive. "I never thought I'd get a second chance," she said softly. Xian kissed her hair. You didn't just get one. You earned it. He turned to him. I don't deserve you. He smiled. That's funny. I was thinking the same thing about you. They stayed that way, entwined, peaceful, hearts full. Not every love story gets rewritten. But theirs did. And this time they wrote the ending together. Epilogue. A life rewritten. On their daughter's first birthday, Shen Wei stood in the backyard, watching as little Anyao waddled toward Xian, arms flailing, laughing in delight. There were friends, cake bubbles floating in the sky. Xian lifted their daughter into the air and spun her in a circle, her laughter like chimes in the breeze. Shen Wei closed her eyes, breathed in the moment and whispered into her heart. This is the life I almost lost. This is the love I chose. Again and again. And as her husband kissed her and their daughter reached for her with chocolate-smeared hands, Shen Wei finally understood. Rebirth wasn't just a gift. It was a promise. And she had kept it. Bonus chapter. Our second beginning. The Liu household was rarely quiet anymore. It was filled with the sound of tiny feet racing down the hall, giggles echoing from every room, and soft lullabies playing from the nursery at night. And yet to Shen Wei it had never felt more peaceful. 3 years had passed. 3 years since she was given another chance. And now, as she looked around the sun-dappled kitchen where Xian sat feeding a very opinionated toddler scrambled eggs, she smiled. Anyao, he said patiently, you can't just feed your eggs to the dog. The fluffy golden retriever wagged its tail happily as their daughter snuck another bite under the table. Shen Wei bit her lip to keep from laughing. She's negotiating, she said. Clearly inherited from you. Xian looked up and grinned. She inherited your stubbornness. Your eyebrows. Your nose. She definitely got my attitude, Shen Wei admitted as Anyao stuck her tongue out at a broccoli floret. Xian chuckled, then stood and kissed the top of Shen Wei's head. Happy anniversary, Wei. She blinked. You remembered? He looked offended. It's the second most important day of my life. She raised an eyebrow. Second. He glanced over at their daughter who was now arguing with the dog about ownership of a pancake. First was the day you gave birth. Even you screamed louder than she did. Shen Wei laughed, then leaned against his chest. I got you something, he murmured. You always get me something. This one's special. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a thin silver necklace with 3 tiny charms. A heart, a moon, and a star. The heart is you, he said quietly. The moon is me, always orbiting you. And the star is our little light. She touched the necklace with trembling fingers. Xian. Put it on, he asked. She nodded, turning so he could clasp it behind her neck. When she faced him again, her eyes were shimmering. I love you, she whispered. More now than ever. I know, he said. I see it in everything you do. In the way you look at her. In how you look at me. Shen Wei rested her head on his shoulder. Do you ever think about the first time? The life before this one? He was quiet for a moment. Sometimes. But not with regret. No. He kissed her temple. Because if we hadn't lived through that, I wouldn't love you this deeply now. She closed her eyes, letting those words wrap around her like the warmest blanket. That evening, after Anyao had been tucked into bed and the house had fallen quiet again, they sat out in the garden, just the two of them. Fireflies blinked lazily around the lilies. The wind carried the soft scent of night-blooming jasmine. Xian leaned back in his chair, holding her hand. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come back? All the time, Shen Wei said. I think I would have watched you fall in love with someone who deserved you. And it would have destroyed me. He looked at her. But you did come back. And this time I won't waste a single moment. Xian reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded note. She blinked. What's that? I wrote it, 3 years ago. The day you told me you were pregnant. He handed it to her and she carefully unfolded the paper. His handwriting, neat and familiar, read, Dear Wei, if this is a dream, I don't want to wake up. If this is real, I will spend every breath I have making sure you're never afraid to stay. No matter how we began, this is our second beginning. And this time I promise, you'll never walk alone. Shen Wei clutched the note to her chest, tears silently slipping down her cheeks. I'm already living my dream, she whispered. He kissed her. Soft. Certain. Eternal. And the stars above, silent witnesses to their vow, twinkled like blessings.